Welcome to this deep dive into Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
Okay.
We're focusing on figuring out how to use these teachings in everyday life.
Yeah.
Our tech-filled world makes it tough to stay present, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
But Tolle's own story offers some hope.
What?
Remember, he wasn't always the picture of serenity we see today.
Right.
He went through intense anxiety and depression.
Really?
It was so severe, he contemplated suicide.
It makes you wonder what could push someone to that point. But it's his transformation that's truly fascinating.
Yeah.
He describes this night where he woke up feeling utter dread.
Right.
The world, even his own existence, felt completely empty.
Wow.
He reached a breaking point and had the thought, I cannot live with myself any longer.
And that's the turning point.
Yeah.
He realized he was both the I and the self he couldn't live with.
Oh.
It was the beginning of his separation from the ego,
Okay.
a concept that forms the foundation of his teachings. He describes feeling like he was pulled into a void, which was terrifying.
Oh.
But then he surrendered to it.
That surrender changed everything.
It did.
He woke up feeling an overwhelming sense of peace and joy,
Wow.
like he was seeing the world with brand new eyes.
He spent years after that simply sitting on park benches,
Really?
completely immersed in this newfound state of bliss.
Oh.
It's from that place that the power of now emerged.
It's inspiring in
Yeah.
a way.
Yeah.
What if we could all access that kind of inner peace, even for a little while each day?
Right.
I admit I get caught up in the mental whirlwind more often than not.
That's the human condition, isn't it?
Yeah.
We get so entangled in our thoughts that we lose sight of the present moment.
Okay.
Tolle argues that most of our suffering stems from this identification with our minds.
All right.
And, as he calls it, the ego.
Okay, so the ego is more than just being arrogant. Right.
Much more.
Okay.
Think of the ego as a false sense of self, an image we create in our minds based on external factors.
Okay.
It constantly seeks validation and satisfaction from the outside world,
Right.
leading us to chase things that promise fulfillment but never quite deliver.
So needing that new gadget, the promotion, the perfect relationship, those are all the ego calling the shots.
Precisely.
Right.
And the problem is, it's a never-ending cycle.
Right.
The ego always wants more, leaving us with a persistent sense of lack and dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
This keeps us preoccupied with the past and the future,
What?
robbing us of the only place where true fulfillment exists, the present moment.
So how do we break free from this ego-driven hamster wheel?
That's where Tolle's practical techniques come in.
Okay.
He doesn't offer quick fixes or external solutions.
Right.
Instead, he focuses on internal shifts and awareness,
Okay.
providing tools to help us reclaim the now.
So no shopping sprees or drastic career changes to find inner peace.
Not quite.
Oh.
It's about rewiring our internal landscape. And one of the simplest yet most powerful tools is the breath.
The breath.
Remember, you're always breathing, but how often do you consciously notice it?
It's true.
Yeah.
I rarely pay attention to my breath unless I'm gasping for air after a workout or something.
That's where deep, conscious breathing comes in.
Okay.
Take a slow, deep breath now.
Okay.
And notice the sensation of the air filling your lungs.
Okay.
Hold it for a moment, and then slowly exhale.
Wow, I already feel a bit calmer.
Yeah.
It's amazing how such a simple act can have such an immediate effect.
That's the power of bringing your awareness to the present moment.
Yeah.
When you focus on your breath, you're anchoring yourself in the now,
Okay.
shifting your attention away from that mental chatter that keeps you stuck in the past or future.
It's like hitting a pause button on the mental whirlwind.
Yeah.
I can see how this could be helpful in stressful situations.
Exactly. Imagine you're feeling overwhelmed at work.
Okay.
Instead of letting the stress consume you, take a few deep breaths. It's like hitting the reset button on your nervous system,
Okay.
allowing you to respond to the situation with more clarity and calm.
That's a really helpful reframing.
Yeah.
I often forget that I have the power to shift my internal state, even in the middle of chaos.
It's a practice, of course.
Right.
And it takes time to cultivate.
Yeah.
But the more you use it, the more accessible that inner stillness becomes.
So deep breathing is like a gateway to the now.
Yes,
But are there other techniques we can use to strengthen that connection to the present moment?
absolutely.
Okay.
Tolle talks about the importance of grounding exercises.
Grounding exercise.
Simple techniques that help you connect with your body and bring your attention back to the here and now.
Okay.
Have you ever tried consciously feeling your feet on the ground?
I don't think I have.
Um,
I'm usually so busy rushing from one thing to the next that I rarely pay attention to my physical sensations.
yeah.
It's like I'm living in my head most of the time.
That's a common experience in our fast-paced world. But try this.
Okay.
Sit comfortably, close your eyes for a moment,
Okay.
and bring your attention to your feet.
Okay.
Feel the soles of your feet pressing against the floor.
Yeah.
Notice the texture, the temperature, the weight of your body grounding you to the earth.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
I've never really focused on this sensation before,
Yeah.
but it's incredibly grounding. It's like I'm literally connecting with the Earth's energy.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
By bringing your awareness to your physical sensations, you're pulling yourself out of your mind and into the present moment.
Okay.
It's a simple yet effective way to interrupt those thought patterns that keep you from fully experiencing life as it unfolds.
Right.
And you can do this anywhere, anytime.
So if I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed, I can just take a moment to feel my feet on the ground and reconnect with my body.
Yeah.
It's a much healthier coping mechanism than reaching for my phone or getting lost in worry.
Precisely. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes to access this state of grounded presence.
It's like we're building a muscle for presence.
Yeah.
The more we use it, the stronger it gets.
You got it.
But deep breathing and grounding exercises are just the beginning.
Okay.
Tolle also talks about mindful pauses as a way to cultivate presence throughout the day.
Mindful pauses.
Yes.
Tell me more.
Imagine you're at work, rushing to meet a deadline.
Right.
Instead of powering through, take a few minutes to step away from your desk.
Okay.
Go for a short walk, notice the sunlight streaming through the window, or simply savor a cup of tea without distraction.
I love the idea of building those mini retreats into my day.
Yeah.
It sounds so much more rejuvenating than mindlessly scrolling through social media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The key is to engage your senses fully and just be present with whatever you're experiencing without judgment.
Okay.
Don't label it as good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant.
Right.
Just observe it with a sense of curiosity and openness. It's like hitting the refresh button on my mental state.
You could say that.
Yeah.
These mindful pauses are a way to interrupt those habitual thought patterns that often lead to stress and anxiety. They're an opportunity to reconnect with the simple pleasures of life,
Yeah.
even in the midst of a hectic day.
Right.
Tolle even talks about savoring each bite of food as a practice in appreciating the present moment.
Huh.
He says, every piece of meat is the best. There's no piece of meat here that is not the best.
At first glance, it sounds a bit odd,
Um,
but I get it.
yeah.
It's about shifting our focus from what we think should be happening to what is actually happening.
Exactly.
Appreciating the simple act of eating instead of mentally reviewing our to-do list.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
Mindful pauses are about reclaiming our attention and redirecting it to the present moment.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful act of self-care in a world that's constantly vying for our attention. But the most challenging aspect of Tolle's teachings, for many, is the idea of observing thoughts without judgment.
I'll admit, that's the part I struggle with the most.
Yeah.
It's like my mind is a runaway train,
Right.
constantly bombarding me with thoughts and anxieties. How can I possibly observe them without getting swept up in the chaos?
It's a practice.
Okay.
And it requires patience and compassion.
Yeah.
Think of it like watching clouds drift by in the sky.
Okay.
You notice them, you observe their shapes and movements,
Yeah.
but you don't try to control them or judge them as good or bad.
Right.
You simply allow them to be.
So instead of getting entangled in those mental narratives,
Yeah,
I'm learning to create some space between myself and my thoughts.
precisely.
Oh.
That space is where true freedom lies.
Okay.
It's where you can begin to detach from the grip of the ego
Right.
and tap into a deeper sense of peace and stillness that exists beyond the mental whirlwind.
This is where it gets interesting. If we can break free from that mental noise, even for a little while,
Yeah.
we're accessing a whole different level of awareness.
Right.
It's like Tolle says,
Hold on, but before we get to that,
okay,
there's another important piece to this puzzle, the concept of psychological time.
okay,
Tolle describes it as a mental disease.
a mental disease.
Yeah.
That sounds intense.
It is.
I'm intrigued.
He's referring to our obsession with the past and the future.
Okay.
He argues that this constant mental projecting keeps us trapped in a cycle of wanting and striving, obscuring the power and beauty of the now.
I can see how that creates a constant sense of unease.
Right.
It's like we're never fully present because we're always chasing something or dwelling on something else.
And he even gives examples of how this plays out on a larger scale,
Okay.
pointing to ideologies that fixate on a future utopia,
Yeah.
often leading to harmful actions in the present.
It's a stark reminder of how losing sight of the present moment can have negative consequences, both personally and collectively.
Yes.
So how do we apply this understanding of psychological time to our own lives, especially in a world that's constantly pushing us to strive for more?
It starts with recognizing that true fulfillment isn't found in some distant future or in reliving past glories.
Okay.
It's about shifting our focus to what's happening right now.
Easier said than done, right?
Right.
Especially when our phones are constantly buzzing with notifications and our to-do lists are a mile long.
Absolutely. That's where those practical techniques we discussed become so crucial.
Okay.
Deep breathing, grounding exercises, mindful pauses.
Yeah.
These aren't just trendy self-help gimmicks.
Right.
They're powerful tools for disentangling ourselves from the clutches of psychological time
Yeah.
and reclaiming the present moment.
Speaking of reclaiming the present,
Yeah.
Tolle talks about nature as a powerful teacher in this regard, right?
He does.
Yeah.
He uses a simple yet profound anecdote about two ducks fighting.
Two ducks fighting.
He describes watching them engage in a heated squabble, flapping their wings and creating a commotion.
Then?
Just as suddenly as it began, they swim off in opposite directions, shake off the energy of the encounter,
Okay.
and go right back to their peaceful duck existence.
It's like they instinctively know how to let go.
Yeah.
How to not dwell on the past.
Right.
No therapy required.
Exactly. They don't carry the weight of the argument with them.
Right.
They don't spend the rest of the day replaying the scene in their minds or plotting revenge.
Okay.
They simply move on, present to the next moment.
It makes you realize how much we humans overcomplicate things, doesn't it?
It does.
We get caught up in stories and dramas
Yeah.
that often have very little to do with what's actually happening in the present moment.
And that's where the suffering comes in.
Yeah.
We lose that sense of ease, that connection to the peace that's always available to us when we're fully present.
It reminds me of Tolle's emphasis on relationships.
Yeah.
It's a big topic.
Right.
And I think many of us are looking for fulfillment through our relationships, hoping they'll bring us happiness.
Tully's view might surprise you.
Okay.
He actually states that relationships aren't designed to make us happy.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's a bold statement.
He believes that relationships are opportunities for growth, for becoming more conscious.
Okay.
They serve as mirrors,
Right.
reflecting back to us our own patterns,
Yeah.
our unresolved issues,
Okay.
our unhealed wounds.
So it's not about finding that perfect partner who completes us,
Right.
but rather using relationships as a path for self-discovery.
You got it.
Okay.
When we're present in our relationships, we relate to others from a place of being,
Right.
rather than through the lens of the ego.
Okay.
This allows us to see beyond the surface level, beyond those quirks and habits that tend to trigger us.
And hopefully avoid those unnecessary arguments that stem from projecting our own stuff onto our partners.
That's the idea.
Okay.
It's not easy, of course.
Right.
But by practicing presence in our interactions, we create space for deeper, more authentic connections.
I appreciate that Tolle doesn't sugarcoat things.
Yeah.
He's realistic about the challenges we face,
Right.
both internally and in our relationships.
Yeah.
But he also offers a path forward,
Right.
a way to navigate those challenges with more awareness and grace.
And ultimately, that path leads back to the present moment.
Yeah.
He reminds us that this is the only place where true joy and fulfillment reside.
Right.
He beautifully articulates this in the quote, "This is the state of connectedness with the source that we call enlightenment."
It's a powerful statement
It is.
that encourages us to look beyond our limited sense of self, to tap into something much greater.
Yeah.
I think that's what resonates with so many people.
Right?
The Power of Now isn't just a self-help book.
Right.
It's an invitation to embark on a profound spiritual journey.
It is.
But it's important to remember that Tolle isn't suggesting we become passive observers,
Yeah.
detached from the world and its problems.
Right.
In fact, he emphasizes that being present empowers us to take more effective action.
Yes.
Because when we're not clouded by mental noise,
Hmm.
we can respond to situations with clarity and intention, right?
Exactly. It's about moving from a reactive state to a place of conscious choice, aligning our actions with our values.
Oh, okay.
That's how we create real change, both
Right.
internally and externally.
So if someone's listening to this and feeling inspired to integrate these teachings into their life, where do they begin?
Right.
It can feel overwhelming, especially when you're first starting out.
The first step is simply becoming aware of when you're not present.
Okay.
Notice those moments when you're lost in thought,
Right.
rehashing the past, or worrying about the future.
Okay.
It's about catching yourself in those habitual patterns of mental autopilot.
It's like becoming a detective of our own minds.
Yeah,
Noticing those sneaky thought patterns that steal us away from the present moment.
exactly. And then gently, without judgment, bring your attention back to the now.
Right.
Feel your breath,
Okay.
the sensations in your body, the sounds around you.
Yeah.
Those simple grounding techniques we discussed earlier can be incredibly helpful.
So the next time I find myself mindlessly scrolling through my phone or stressing about deadlines,
Yeah.
I can take a deep breath, feel my feet on the ground, and ask myself, what's happening right now?
That's it.
Okay.
That simple question can be a powerful anchor,
Yeah.
pulling you back to the present moment
Yeah.
and breaking the cycle of unconsciousness.
Right.
And if you're looking for more guidance, I highly recommend picking up a copy of The Power of Now.
Okay.
Tolle delves into these concepts in much greater depth, offering a wealth of insights and practical techniques.
It's a journey, not a destination, right?
Right.
We're not aiming for some perfect state of constant presence,
Yeah.
but rather a willingness to keep showing up, keep practicing, and keep coming back to the now.
You've got it. It's about cultivating that awareness, that ability to choose presence over unconsciousness moment by moment.
Right.
And that in itself is a powerful transformation.
Now, Tolle provides a lot of specific techniques for staying present, especially in our fast-paced world.
Yes.
Let's dive into some of those.
Okay.
I'm ready to get practical.
One of the most fundamental techniques,
Yeah.
and one we've touched on already, is paying attention to your breath.
Okay.
It might seem simple, even obvious,
Right.
but there's a reason this practice is at the core of so many spiritual traditions.
I get that we're breathing all the time,
Right.
but how do we make it a conscious practice?
Yeah.
How do we move beyond just breathing unconsciously to actually using the breath as
Yeah.
a tool for presence?
The key is to become aware of the breath as it's happening.
Okay.
Notice the sensation of the air flowing in and out of your body.
Right.
Feel the rise and fall of your chest and abdomen.
Okay.
Don't try to change the breath. Simply observe it.
So we're bringing our attention to something we usually do on autopilot.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you'll notice that as you focus on your breath, your mind starts to quiet down.
Right.
You're giving it something to focus on besides all that mental chatter.
It's almost like the breath acts as an anchor,
Yeah.
pulling us back to the present moment whenever we feel ourselves drifting off into thoughts and worries.
You could say that.
Okay.
And the beautiful thing is you can practice this anywhere, anytime.
Right.
Waiting in line at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Take a few conscious breaths.
Okay.
Feeling stressed at work.
Yeah.
Pause and notice the breath.
It's like having a portable reset button for our mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes to drop into that state of presence, even amidst the chaos of daily life.
Okay, so breath awareness is a great tool to have in our back pocket.
Yes.
What about those mindful pauses we talked about earlier?
Right.
How do we actually integrate those into our busy schedules?
It's simpler than you might think. The key is to be intentional about creating those pauses throughout the day.
Right.
It could be as simple as taking a few minutes to step away from your desk and look out the window.
Okay.
Really notice the colors, the shapes, the movement of the clouds.
Okay.
Or take a moment to savor that first sip of coffee, feeling the warmth of the mug in your hands and the taste of the coffee on your tongue.
I love those ideas.
Yeah.
It's like we're giving ourselves permission to slow down and actually experience the little things we often rush past.
And remember, the key is to drop the judgment.
Right.
Don't label those experiences as good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant.
Okay.
Simply observe them with an open, curious mind.
It's about shifting from evaluation mode to observation mode.
Exactly. And those mindful pauses can be particularly helpful when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They give you a chance to step out of that frantic energy
Okay.
and create some space for peace and clarity.
It's like hitting the pause button on the movie of our lives.
Yep.
Giving ourselves a chance to catch our breath and reconnect with the present moment.
Now, in addition to breath work and mindful pauses,
Okay.
another technique that can be extremely helpful,
Yeah.
especially for those who tend to get stuck in their heads,
Okay.
is grounding exercises.
Grounding exercises, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What are those all about?
They're designed to bring you back into your body and out of your head.
Okay.
When we're stressed or anxious, we tend to disconnect from our physical sensations,
Okay.
losing touch with the ground beneath us, literally and metaphorically.
So grounding exercises are a way to reconnect with our physical presence, to anchor ourselves in the present moment.
Precisely.
Okay.
One of the simplest exercises is to focus on your feet.
Okay.
Feel the soles of your feet pressing against the floor.
Okay.
Notice the texture, the temperature, the weight of your body grounding you to the earth.
It's a way to literally root ourselves in the present moment.
You can also try focusing on your breath, as we discussed earlier, or noticing the sensations in your body.
Got it.
Feel the weight of your clothing,
Right.
the temperature of the air on your skin, the gentle rise and fall of your chest as you breathe.
It's about bringing our awareness to those subtle sensations we often ignore.
Another effective grounding technique is to engage your senses fully.
Okay.
Look around the room and notice the details you might normally miss. The patterns in the carpet, the shadows on the wall, the sound of the clock ticking.
Right.
By consciously tuning into our senses, we're grounding ourselves in the reality of the present moment.
It's like we're pulling ourselves out of that mental whirlwind and back into the physical world.
And that can be incredibly grounding, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed or disconnected.
Right.
These exercises can be done anywhere, anytime,
Okay.
making them a valuable tool for navigating the stresses of daily life.
It's like having a secret weapon against anxiety and overwhelm.
Now let's move on to a technique that might be a bit more challenging, but ultimately very rewarding.
Okay.
We touched on it briefly earlier, observing your thoughts without judgment.
This is the one I struggle with the most.
Yeah.
I'm constantly bombarded with thoughts, worries, to-do lists.
Yeah.
It's hard to even see them, let alone observe them, without getting sucked into the drama.
It's a practice,
Okay.
and it takes time and patience.
Right.
But think of it like watching a movie.
Okay.
You can observe the characters, the plot, the emotions unfolding on the screen,
Okay.
but you don't have to get personally invested in the drama.
So instead of identifying with our thoughts, we're learning to simply witness them, like an observer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Imagine you're sitting by a river,
Okay.
watching the water flow by.
Okay.
Your thoughts are like the current,
Yeah.
constantly moving and changing.
Okay.
You can observe the current, but you don't have to jump in and get swept away by it.
So when a thought arises, we acknowledge it,
Yeah,
but we don't engage with it.
right.
We don't judge it as good or bad, right or wrong.
We simply let it be.
Okay.
And as we practice this, we start to create some distance between ourselves and our thoughts. We begin to realize that we are not our thoughts.
That's a profound distinction.
It is.
It's like separating the dancer from the dance.
We have thoughts,
Yeah.
but we are not defined by them.
Right.
And that realization can be incredibly liberating.
Okay.
Because when we're not caught up in the content of our thoughts, we're free to experience the present moment more fully, to connect with a deeper sense of peace and stillness within.
So how do we actually practice observing our thoughts without judgment?
Yeah.
It seems so elusive, especially when my mind is racing.
Start by setting aside a few minutes each day for quiet reflection.
Okay.
Sit in a comfortable position.
Okay.
Close your eyes
Right.
and simply notice the thoughts that arise.
Okay.
Don't try to stop them or change them.
Right.
Just observe them with a gentle, curious awareness.
So it's like we're becoming curious observers of our own mental landscape.
Exactly.
Oh.
And as you do this, you might notice that your mind resists.
Right.
It wants to keep thinking, analyzing, judging.
Yeah.
That's perfectly normal.
Okay.
Just acknowledge the resistance.
Right.
And gently bring your attention back to your breath or to the sensations in your body.
Okay.
With practice, you'll find that you're able to observe your thoughts with more ease and detachment.
And as we do that, we start to experience the peace that comes from stepping out of that mental whirlwind.
Yeah.
It's like finding a sanctuary within ourselves,
Right.
a place of stillness amidst the chaos.
Now remember, this is a practice.
Right.
It takes time and patience. Don't get discouraged if you find your mind wandering. Just gently bring it back to the present moment. And with each moment of presence, you're strengthening your ability to break free from the grip of the ego and live a more joyful, peaceful, and fulfilling life.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on a concept that Tolle describes as the pain body. It sounds a bit intense. Can you shed some light on what he means by that?
It's a powerful concept and one that resonates deeply with many people.
Yeah.
Tolle describes the pain body as an accumulation of emotional pain that we carry within us. It's like an invisible weight we drag around, often without even realizing it.
It sounds almost like a separate entity, something that exists alongside our true selves.
That's a good way to put it.
Mm.
He says it's formed from our past experiences, the traumas, hurts, and disappointments we've accumulated over time.
So it's like a reservoir of unresolved emotional energy that we carry with us.
Precisely. And this pain body can manifest in many ways as anger, sadness, fear, anxiety, resentment, even physical pain.
I can see how that could sabotage our efforts to find peace and happiness. It's like we're carrying around this extra baggage that weighs us down.
The pain body wants to survive,
Okay.
so it will do whatever it takes to stay alive. It will trigger us, provoke us, even sabotage our efforts to find peace and happiness.
So how do we deal with this pain body? How do we break free from its grip?
The first step is awareness. To recognize when it's active, to see the patterns in our behavior, our emotions, our reactions. Notice when you're feeling triggered, when you're reacting in a way that's out of proportion to the situation. That's a sign the pain body is at work.
So we're becoming detectives of our own emotional patterns, noticing when that pain body is trying to take over.
Exactly. And once you're aware of it, you can start to disidentify from it, to see it as something separate from your true self, and to choose not to engage with it.
So instead of getting swept up in the drama of the pain body, we can observe it with the same detachment we practice with our thoughts.
Precisely. And as we do this, the pain body begins to lose its power. It can't survive in the light of our awareness. It's like shining a light into a dark room. The darkness dissipates.
And we're left with a sense of peace and spaciousness. I can see how this could be a game changer in terms of how we relate to our own emotional experiences. But dealing with the pain body sounds like challenging work. Where do we even begin?
It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face our pain. But it's also an incredibly rewarding journey. Because as we release the pain body, we free ourselves from the past and open ourselves to a more joyful, loving, and fulfilling present.
It's like shedding an old skin and emerging as a new, more authentic version of ourselves.
Exactly. And Tolle offers many helpful techniques in the Power of Now to support this process. He talks about the importance of acceptance, of allowing the pain to be there without resistance, and of using the power of the now to transform that pain body into a source of wisdom and compassion.
It's a reminder that even our pain can be a teacher, a catalyst for growth and transformation. But it's not about forcing ourselves to be happy or pretending the pain isn't there.
It's about approaching our pain with a gentle curiosity, with a willingness to be present with whatever arises without judgment or resistance.
It sounds like a radical act of self-love to be present with our pain in this way.
It is, and it's from that place of radical acceptance that true healing can occur.
It feels like we've covered so much ground already, from understanding the ego and the pain body to exploring practical techniques like grounding exercises and mindful pauses. But I keep coming back to this idea of surrendering to the now. It's something Tolle emphasizes throughout the book.
Surrender can be a tricky word.
Yeah.
For many, it evokes feelings of weakness or giving up. But Tolle is talking about something much deeper.
He's referring to a radical acceptance of what is, isn't he? Letting go of our resistance to the present moment, even when it's not aligning with our expectations or desires.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that fighting against reality only creates suffering. It's like swimming against the current. It takes a lot of energy and gets you nowhere.
There's that saying, what you resist persists.
I've definitely experienced that in my own life. The more I try to force things to be a certain way, the more frustrated I become. That resistance is the ego trying to maintain control. Surrender, on the other hand, is about aligning ourselves with the flow of life, even when that flow seems turbulent. It's about trusting that there's an intelligence at work that's bigger than our limited minds.
I can see how that could be a powerful shift in perspective. But it's not about becoming passive or giving up on our goals and dreams, right?
Not at all. In fact, Tolle argues that surrender is a prerequisite for effective action. When we're not clouded by resistance and mental noise, we're able to see things more clearly and respond in a way that's aligned with our true values and intentions.
So it's about acting from a place of alignment rather than from a place of fear or force.
Precisely. And that's where true power lies.
Okay.
Tolle gives the example of people facing extreme situations, like a terminal illness or a natural disaster. In those moments, when the ego's usual defenses crumble, a profound shift in consciousness can occur. It's like being stripped bare, forced to confront the ultimate reality of our existence.
It sounds like a humbling experience, but also a potentially liberating one.
And in that confrontation with reality, surrender becomes the only sane option.
Yeah.
It's no longer about fighting for control, but about surrendering to what is.
And in that surrender, a deep peace can emerge.
Hey, peace that transcends the circumstances, a peace that comes from aligning ourselves with the flow of life, even when that flow seems turbulent. Tolle calls it the peace of God.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
But how do we cultivate this state of surrender in our everyday lives when we're not facing extreme circumstances? It's easy to talk about surrender in theory, but how do we actually practice it when we're stuck in traffic or dealing with a difficult coworker?
It starts with awareness, just like everything else we've discussed. Notice those moments when you're resisting the present moment, when you're clinging to how things should be rather than accepting how they are.
It's like that internal battle between what is and what we want it to be.
Exactly. And then gently, consciously choose to let go, to say yes to what is, even if it's not what you prefer.
It sounds simple, but I imagine it takes a lot of practice.
It does. And it can be helpful to start small. Surrender to a traffic jam instead of letting it ruin your mood. Surrender to a rainy day instead of wishing it were sunny. As you practice surrendering to these smaller inconveniences, you strengthen your capacity to surrender to the bigger challenges that life inevitably throws your way.
It's like building a muscle for surrender. The more we use it, the stronger it becomes.
And as we do, we create more space for peace, joy, and acceptance in our lives. Tolle even talks about the importance of conscious death as part of this journey.
Conscious death. Now that sounds really intense.
He's not talking about physical death, but rather the death of the ego, the death of that false sense of self that we've been exploring. He says that true spiritual awakening requires a willingness to die to the old self, to let go of the attachments that are keeping us stuck.
It's like a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly.
Right.
The old form must dissolve in order for the new one to emerge.
It's a powerful metaphor. And while this process can feel challenging, even painful at times, it's ultimately a liberation. Because in that letting go, we open ourselves to a whole new dimension of being. We connect with our true nature, which is pure consciousness, pure being.
It sounds like a profound shift in identity, moving from a limited sense of self to a more expansive experience of who we truly are.
And from that place, we're able to live a more authentic, joyful, and purposeful life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the power of now,
Yeah.
I'm struck by the fact that it's not just a book of ideas. It's an invitation to embark on a transformative journey.
A journey to discovering the power of the present moment and awakening to our true nature, which is beyond the limitations of the ego and the pain body.
It's a journey that requires courage, commitment, and a willingness to surrender. But ultimately, it's a journey that leads to freedom, peace, and a deeper connection to ourselves and the world around us.
We encourage you to pick up a copy of The Power of Now and explore these teachings for yourself. See how they can transform your life one present moment at a time.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, remember to breathe, to be present, and to embrace the power of now. It feels like we've covered so much ground already.
It's been a lot.
From understanding the ego and the pain body
Yeah.
to exploring practical techniques like grounding exercises and mindful pauses.
Right.
But I keep coming back to this idea of surrendering to the now.
Yeah.
Something Tolle emphasizes throughout the book.
Surrender can be a tricky word.
Yeah.
For many, it evokes feelings of weakness or giving up.
Right.
But Tolle is talking about something much deeper.
He's referring to a radical acceptance of what is, isn't he?
Mhm.
Letting go of our resistance to the present moment, even when it's not aligning with our expectations or desires.
Exactly.
Love
It's
that.
about recognizing that fighting against reality only creates suffering.
Yeah.
It's like swimming against the current.
Right.
It takes a lot of energy and gets you nowhere.
There's that saying, what you resist persists.
Yeah.
I've definitely experienced that in my own life.
Right.
The more I try to force things to be a certain way, the more frustrated I become.
That resistance is the ego trying to maintain control.
Okay.
Surrender, on the other hand,
Yeah.
is about aligning ourselves with the flow of life,
Right.
even when that flow seems turbulent.
Okay.
It's about trusting that there's an intelligence at work that's bigger than our limited minds.
I can see how that could be a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
But it's not about becoming passive or giving up on our goals and dreams.
Not at all.
Okay.
In fact, Tolle argues that surrender is a prerequisite for effective action.
Okay.
When we're not clouded by resistance and mental noise,
Yeah.
we're able to see things more clearly and respond in a way that's aligned with our true values and intentions.
So it's about acting from a place of alignment rather than from a place of fear or force.
Precisely.
Okay.
And that's where true power lies.
Okay.
Tolle gives the example of people facing extreme situations, like a terminal illness or a natural disaster. In those moments, when the ego's usual defenses crumble, a profound shift in consciousness can occur.
Okay.
It's like being stripped bare, forced to confront the ultimate reality of our existence.
It sounds like a humbling experience, but also a potentially liberating one.
And in that confrontation with reality,
Yeah.
surrender becomes the only sane option.
Right.
It's no longer about fighting for control,
Yeah.
but about surrendering to what is.
And in that surrender, a deep peace can emerge.
A peace that transcends the circumstances, a peace that comes from aligning ourselves with the flow of life.
Yeah.
Even when that flow seems turbulent.
Right.
Tolle calls it the peace of God.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
But how do we cultivate this state of surrender in our everyday lives?
Right.
When we're not facing extreme circumstances?
Yeah.
It's easy to talk about surrender in theory,
Right.
but how do we actually practice it when we're stuck in traffic or dealing with a difficult coworker?
It starts with awareness, just like everything else we've discussed. Notice those moments when you're resisting the present moment.
Yeah.
When you're clinging to how things should be rather than accepting how they are.
It's like that internal battle between what is and what we want it to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then gently, consciously, choose to let go.
Okay.
To say yes to what is, even if it's not what you prefer.
It sounds simple, but I imagine it takes a lot of practice.
It does.
Okay.
And it can be helpful to start small.
Yeah, okay.
Surrender to a traffic jam instead of letting it ruin your mood.
Right.
Surrender to a rainy day instead of wishing it were sunny.
Okay.
As you practice surrendering to these smaller inconveniences,
Yeah.
you strengthen your capacity to surrender to the bigger challenges that life inevitably throws your way.
It's like building a muscle for surrender.
Yeah.
The more we use it, the stronger it becomes.
And as we do, we create more space for peace, joy, and acceptance in our lives.
Right.
Tolle even talks about the importance of conscious death as part of this journey.
Conscious death. Now that sounds really intense.
He's not talking about physical death,
Okay.
but rather the death of the ego, the death of that false sense of self that we've been exploring.
Right.
He says that true spiritual awakening requires a willingness to die to the old self,
Okay.
to let go of the attachments that are keeping us stuck.
It's like a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly.
Right.
The old form must dissolve in order for the new one to emerge.
It's a powerful metaphor.
Yeah.
And while this process can feel challenging, even painful at times,
Right.
it's ultimately a liberation.
Okay.
Because in that letting go, we open ourselves to a whole new dimension of being.
Yeah.
We connect with our true nature, which is pure consciousness, pure being.
It sounds like a profound shift in identity, moving from a limited sense of self to a more expansive experience of who we truly are.
And from that place, we're able to live a more authentic, joyful, and purposeful life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the power of now, I'm struck by the fact that it's not just a book of ideas. It's an invitation to embark on a transformative journey.
A journey to discovering the power of the present moment and awakening to our true nature,
Yeah.
which is beyond the limitations of the ego and the pain body.
It's a journey that requires courage, commitment, and a willingness to surrender.
Yes.
But ultimately, it's a journey that leads to freedom, peace, and a deeper connection to ourselves and the world around us.
We encourage you to pick up a copy of The Power of Now and explore these teachings for yourself.
Yeah.
See how they can transform your life one present moment at a time.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes.
Until next time, remember to breathe, to be present, and to embrace the power of now